Hey there, welcome back to Story Time for our 8 to 12-year-old group. I am happy to see you come back today. We are continuing to read from The Indian in the Cupboard by Lynne Reid Banks. I hope that you are enjoying the story. And I guess you are. That's why you come back to see it, right? The last time that we had read Omri's Indian, Little Bear, had actually gotten into a fight with Patrick's cowboy, who we discovered his name was Boone, Boo-hoo Boone, because he cries all the time. And so, remember, Omri had kept him overnight because Patrick was not being very careful with him and was going to take him home and show him to his whole family after he had turned him from plastic into real without Omri's permission. He just did it anyway. So Omri convinced him to let a cowboy stay with him overnight, but Patrick insisted that Omri bring it to school with him the next day. So as things were, as they were staying, they got into the cowboy had gotten out of the dressing up crate, Boone and his horse. There was a knot hole in the bottom of the crate that the horse had knocked out, and they had gotten out, and he had found Little Bear, and they were fighting. Little Bear was shooting arrows, and Boone had his gun, and so Patrick had to stop all of it. Omri had to stop all of it, and so it kind of ended with them sitting back and taking them apart, and Omri was going to bring some breakfast for them. I remember Boone was said, I ain't that hungry. He just wanted, what did he say? He wanted some steak and 3 or 4 eggs and big old heaping helping of beans and Washak with a jug of coffee. So it's kind of funny. He wasn't hungry, but he wanted all that food. So we are continuing to read. This is chapter 10 called Breakfast Truce. Do you know what truce means? Truce means when you come together and you decide that you're not going to fight with somebody anymore. You're going to decide to be nice to each other. So that's what this truce is, breakfast truce. So they're getting ready to have some breakfast. Omri crept downstairs. The house was still asleep. He decided to cook breakfast for himself and his cowboy and Indian. He was quite a good cook, but he'd mostly done sweet stuff before. However, any fool, he felt sure, could fry an egg. The steaks were out of the question, but beans were no problem. Omri put butter in the frying pan on the stove. The fat began to smoke. Omri broke an egg into it and tried to, but the shell, instead of coming cleanly apart, crumpled up and somehow in his hand and landed in the hot fat mixed up with the egg. It's not good to have the shell with the egg. Not as easy as he thought. Leaving the mess to cook, shell and all, he got a tin of beans out of the cupboard and opened it without trouble. Then he got out a saucepan and began pouring the beans in. Some of them got into the egg pan somehow and seemed to explode. The egg was beginning to curl and the pan was still smoking. Alarmed, he turned off the heat. The center of the egg was still not cooked, and the beans in the pan were stone cold, but the smell in the kitchen was beginning to worry him. He didn't want his mother coming down. He tipped the whole lot into a bowl, hacked on a lopsided slice of loaf of bread, and tiptoed up the stairs again. Little Bear was standing outside his longhouse with his hands on his hips, waiting for him. You bring food? He asked in his usual bossy way. Yes. First, Little Bear want ride. First, you must eat while it's hot. I've been to a lot of trouble to cook it for you, Omri said, sounding like his mother. Little Bear didn't know how to take this, so he burst into a rather forced laugh and pointed at him scornfully. Omri cook, Omri woman. He teased, but Omri wasn't bothered. All the best cooks are men, he retorted. Come on, you're going to eat with Boone. Little Bear's laughter died instantly. Who Boone? You know who he is, the cowboy. The Indian's hands came off his hips, and one of them went to his knife. Oh, knock it off, Little Bear. Have a truce for breakfast, otherwise you won't get any. Leaving him with that thought to chew over, Omri crossed to the crate in which Boone was grooming his white horse, with a wisp of cloth that he had found clinging to a splinter. He'd taken off the little saddle, but the bridle was still on. "Boone, I brought you something to eat," said Omri. "Yup, I thought I smelt something good," said Boone. "Let's get to it." Omri put his hand down. "Climb on." "Aw, shucks, where am I going? Why can't I just eat in my box, where it's safe?" whined Boone. But he clambered up onto Omri's palm and sat grumpily with his back against the middle finger. "You're going to eat with the Indian," said Omri. Boone leaped up suddenly, and he nearly fell off, and he had to grab on hold of the thumb to steady himself. "Heck no, I ain't," he yelled. "You just put me down here. You hear? I ain't sharing my victuals with no lousy, scalp-snaffling Injun, and that's my last word." It was, as it happened, his last word before being set down within 6 inches of his enemy on the sea tray. They both bent their legs into crouches, as if uncertain whether to leap at each other's throats or turn and flee. Omri hurriedly spooned some egg and beans and held it between them. "Smell that," he ordered. "Now, you eat together or you don't get any at all, so make up your minds to it. You can start fighting again afterward, if you must." He took a bit of clean paper and laid it, like a tablecloth, under the spoon. Then he broke off some crumbs of bread and pushed it into each of their hands. Still with their eyes fixed on each other's faces, Indian and cowboy sidled toward the big steaming bowl of food from the opposite sides. Little Bear, after hesitating, was first to shoot his arm out and dip the bread into the egg. Then sudden movement startled Boone so much that he let out a yell and tried to run, but Omri's hand was blocking the way. "Don't be silly, Boone," he said firmly. "I ain't being silly. Them Injuns is just ornery and savage. Them's dirty, and I ain't eatin' from the same bowl as no—" "Boone," said Omri, "Little Bear is no dirtier than you. You should see your own face." Remember, there are very few illustrations in this book, but here is one of them, standing there to eat together. See the bowl that they're talking about, the bowl. It's really just a spoon between the two of them. And look, here is a Little Bear with his headdress on. Remember that he took from the Indian chief who had died in the cupboard, and so Little Bear became the Indian chief, so they took all that. "Is that my fault? What kind of hallucination are you anyways, telling me I'm a dirty when you don't bring me no washing water?" This is a fair complaint, but Omri wasn't about to lose the argument on a side issue. "You can have some after breakfast, but if you don't agree to eat with my Indian, I'm going to tell him your nickname." The cowboy's face fell. "Now, that ain't fair. That plumb ain't no ways fair," he muttered. But hunger was getting the better of him anyway, so, grumbling and swearing under his breath, he turned back and marched to his side of the spoon. But this time Little Bear was seated cross-legged on the piece of paper, a hunk of bean in one hand and a mess of egg in the other, eating heartily. Seeing this, Boone lost no time in tucking in, eyeing the Indian, who ignored him. "Where's my coffee?" he complained after he'd eaten a few bites. "I can't start the day till I've had my jug of coffee." Omri had completely forgotten about coffee, but he was beginning to be pretty well fed up with being bossed around by ungrateful little men, so he settled down to eat the remains of the food and simply said, "Well, you'll have to start this one without any." Little Bear finished his breakfast and stood up. "Now we fight," he announced, and reached for his knife. Omri expected Boone to leap up and run, but he didn't. He just sat there munching bread and beans. "I ain't finished yet," he said. "Ain't gonna fight till I'm plumb full of victuals. So you can just sit down and wait, Redskin." Omri laughed. "Good for you, Boone. Take it easy, Little Bear. Don't forget your promise." Little Bear scowled, but he sat down again. Boone ate and ate. It was It was hard not to suspect that after a while that he was just eating as much and as slowly as possible to put off the moment when they would have to fight. At last, very reluctantly, he scraped the last bit of egg from the spoon, wiped his hand on the sides of his trousers, and stood up. Little Bear was on his feet instantly. Omri stood ready to part them. "Look here, Injun," said Boone. "If we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight fair. Probably ain't even heard a word for fair in your language. But I'm a here to tell you, with me, it's fight fair or don't fight at all. Little Bear fight fair, kill fair, scalp fair. You ain't scalping nobody, less'n you take it off 'em with your teeth." For answer, Little Bear raised his knife, which flashed in the morning light. Omri, his hands on his knees, waited. "Yeah, I see it, but you ain't gonna have it much longer. And why ain't ya? Because I ain't got one, and only got my gun, and my gun's run plumb out of bullets. What I got, and all I got, is my fists. Oh, and one other thing. I got my hallucination here." He waved his hand at Omri without taking his eyes off a Little Bear for a second. "And I know he don't want to see this here purty red scalp of mine hanging from no stinking redskin belt. So if you's gonna fight, it's gonna be fist to fist, face to face, man to man, Injun. D'ye hear me? No weapons, just us two, and let's see if a white man can't lick a red man in a fair fight, less'n maybe, just maybe, you ain't red at all, but yeller." And Boone stepped around the bowl of the spoon, threw his empty gun on the ground, and put his fists up like a boxer. Little Bear was nonplussed. He lowered his knife. He stared at Boone. Whether Little Bear had completely understood the cowboy's strange speech was doubtful, but he couldn't mistake the gesture of throwing the gun away. As Boone began to dance around him, fists up, making little mock jab towards his face, Little Bear was getting madder and madder. He made a sudden swipe at him with his knife. Boone jumped back. "Ah, you mighty Injun, I see. I'll have to set my hallucination onto you." But Omri didn't have to do anything. Little Bear had got the message. Throwing down the knife in a fury, he hurled himself on to Boone. What followed was not a fist fight or a wrestling match or anything so well organized. It was an all-in-all, no-holds-barred two-man war. They rolled on the ground, pummeling, kicking, and butting with their heads. At one point, Omri thought he saw Boone trying to bite. Maybe he succeeded because Little Bear suddenly let him go, and Boone rolled away swift and as a barrel down a slope and onto his legs, and then, with a spring like a bow-legged panther, onto the Indian again, feet first. Little Bear let out a noise like oof. He caught Boone by both ankles and heaved him off. Little Bear picked up a cold clod of the compost and flung it after him, catching him full in the face. Then Little Bear got up and ran at him, holding both fists together and swinging them as he had swung the battle axe. They caught the cowboy a heavy whack on the ear, which sent him flying to one side. But as he flew, he caught Little Bear a blow in the chest with one boot. That left them both on the ground. The next moment, each of the men found himself pinned down by a giant finger. "All right, boys, that's enough," said Omri, in his father's firm end-of-the-fight voice. "It's a draw. Now, you must get cleaned up for school." So that's the end of that chapter. That was a short chapter for today. So they wasn't much of a truce, was it? They ate some breakfast together, but then they got right up and fought and fought and fought until Omri stopped them. But this time they didn't have any weapons, so nobody was going to get too badly hurt because Boone didn't have bullets in his gun, and so Little Bear had put down his knife so he wouldn't fight with that either. So we'll see how things continue to go with him. So they're getting ready to go to school, and I'm sure that Patrick is anxiously waiting for them to get there. And he will not have forgotten. I am almost sure of that. And then we'll see what happens with the cowboy and the Indian at school. So how are they going to keep them hidden while they're all day at school? Will they be able to keep them hidden while they're all day at school? Are they going to be able to keep their secret? Is anybody else going to find out about that? How is Little Bear going to react to being at school? And how is Boone going to react now to being with Patrick once Omri gives him to Patrick? Things should get even more interesting than what they are. And so Boone keeps thinking that it's all just a hallucination. It's just something that he's seen in his brain. He doesn't think that any of that is really happening. So it'd be interesting what they think of when they get to school. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you come back for our next chapter, which is chapter 11, called School. And as we continue to read and find out what's going to be happening in the Indian in the Cupboard. Hey, have a great rest of your day. Get out, do something fun. Maybe settle down and read some book that you enjoy by yourself today or with somebody in your family today, but have some fun or have some time enjoying some reading. So I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for seeing me today. Bye.